Hi everyone, today we're going to show you how to install our 5th gen 4Runner Low Pro winch bumper. This bumper is for the 2014 and newer Toyota 4Runner. And I'm going to start with showing you what comes with the bumper as far as hardware and brackets that you'll receive with your bumper. You are going to receive with the bumper 2 of these L-shaped mounting brackets, 2 flat mounting brackets. Also, if you ordered the Extreme LED 30-inch light bar from us, you will get 2 of these generic LED light bar mounting legs. And for hardware, you're going to receive 4 3/8x1 carriage bolts, 2 3/8x1 flange bolts, 2 12mm bolts, 6 3/8 flange nuts, 8 grade 8 3/8 flat washers, 2 1/2-inch flat washers, and 8 3/8 flat washers. So we went ahead and mounted the light bar into this bumper already. This light bar is Baja Designs. So when you're mounting your Baja Designs light bar, you're going to use the supplied mounting legs that they send with the light, and you're going to want to orient them so the leg points underneath the light. And this particular one is a 20-inch light bar. You'll want to do the same thing with the 30-inch light bar. Next, you're going to, if you're putting a winch into your bumper, you're going to want to do it first before you put the bumper onto the 4Runner. So the winch is going to bolt into these 4 holes here, and the winch fair lead is going to mount into this plate here. And you'll want to go ahead and get all those things installed into the bumper first before you install it onto the 4Runner. If you got a Haas license plate mount from us with your bumper, you're going to want to install that also while you're working on installing the winch. So you're going to put the mounting bracket that comes with the Haas license plate mount in between the bumper here and the actual fair lead plate. So it gets sandwiched in between. You'll bolt your fair lead on, and then you can go ahead and install your winch and run your winch rope through the bumper. For this particular install that we're doing today, this bumper is only receiving a light bar. So we're not putting a winch or anything else in this one. The light bar is installed, and we're now ready to move on to removing the plastic bumper cover and all the pieces from the front of the 4Runner. We have our 4Runner on the car hoist here, and we're getting ready to remove the original plastic front bumper. So the first thing you're going to want to start with is going through, getting into the fender well area here, removing the screws and clips. You want to use a 10mm socket or wrench for these screws. Some 4Runners have these plastic clips. You want to turn those and pull them out, or they might have screws. You use the same 10mm socket for those to remove those. Moving along the bottom here, there's a few more screws. You'll use your 10mm for these as well. Going along across the middle here, 2 on the bottom there, and then the same thing around this corner here and up into the fender well here, plastic clips or screws. Start by removing all of those first. So after you get your plastic clips or screws removed, you're going to want to peel back this little plastic piece here. You want to pry it away from the bumper and then push it back into the inner fender well area so that the inner fender is unclipped from the bumper cover. All right, we've moved on to working in the engine bay now. Here, popped open the hood, and we have to take this plastic cover off from the engine bay. Typically, there are plastic clips that go into all of these holes across here. This particular one we're working on did not have all of them. We have one here just to show you how to get them out. So this is what the clip is going to look like. You're going to want to push down on the center of the clip and then lift from the outside here and pop the clip up out of the hole. So you want to remove all of those around the hole outside of this cover and remove this plastic cover. All right, we've got our plastic cover removed from the engine bay there. Next thing we're going to do is go through and remove these clips here that hold in the grill and the top of the bumper. So there's a screw here You'll need 10mm socket for that. Plastic clip here, and then some along the inside here. All of these little black plastic clips down there need to be removed. So those, you're going to just take a flat blade screwdriver, put it under the edge, pop the top of the clip up, and then you can lift the clip out of the hole. So go ahead and remove all of those next. So we're about ready to pull the bumper cover off. The next thing we need to do is disconnect the fog light wiring. So you want to get inside the front bumper here and disconnect the plugs for the fog lights. And then once those two are disconnected, one on each side, we're ready to take the bumper cover off. So you're going to start at the fenders and grab this top corner of the bumper first. You want to peel it around that little plastic bump there, and then just pull evenly away from the front of the 4Runner. The cover will unclip from the fender and the headlights, and then it'll be ready to come off. So we have both corners of the plastic peeled away from the fenders and the headlights. It's all unclipped, and the cover's ready to just pull straight off. Now that our plastic bumper cover has been removed, we're going to remove these support pieces from the front of the frame. So first thing you want to do is peel this styrofoam pad off of there so you can access this hardware inside of here. So you'll want to use a 14mm socket, an extension to get inside here and take these 3 nuts off of each side. And once those nuts are all completely removed, then this aluminum bar can be pulled off the front of the frame. So we've now removed the aluminum support structure from the front of the frame here. Next thing that needs to come off is these steel brackets here. So you're going to use 14mm socket or wrench on these as well. These 3 on the outside and 1 on the inside. Take those bolts out, remove this piece, make sure you save the bolts. We need to reuse those for installing the low pro bumper. All right, so we've gotten the little frame horn brackets removed there. We don't need to reuse those, just the bolts that held them on. You'll want to keep those. Next thing we want to do is trim this plastic so that's not in the way of the low pro bumper when we put it on. You want to come in here and trim right along the bottom here, up and through this portion here, and remove this whole bottom section of the plastic. Otherwise it will interfere with the low pro bumper. This one has already been trimmed from a previous install, so you can see here it's been cut up a little higher. That's how you want the driver's side to look. Also, while you're working in this area, if you are installing a winch with your low pro, you may need to push this air conditioning line over a little bit just to get some clearance here so that it doesn't rub on the winch. This line is pretty soft, it moves easily. Just don't kink it or bend it. You can just kind of slowly push on it like that, and it'll just curve out of the way. You usually don't need much room. That will typically do it, and then you'll have room for your winch. Also, if you're installing an integrated style winch that has a control box built into the top of the winch, it's going to interfere with this power steering cooler line right here. So you'll have to either relocate the integrated control box somewhere else, or if you want to leave it there and you can't relocate it, you will have to probably unbolt these brackets here, move this power steering line up, or try to bend this line and manipulate it a little bit to get it up above the winch so that it's out of the way and it's not rubbing on your winch when you install the bumper. All right, so we've got our plastic all trimmed, ready for the low pro to fit on. Trim this area out here. We just used a box cutter with a real sharp blade in there, and it just cut right through the plastic. So that one's trimmed. This side is trimmed. We pushed our AC line over a little bit, and then we talked about clearancing the power steering line if you need to. Also, we do actually sell a power steering relocation kit, like cooler relocation kit, with our 4runner Overland series front bumpers. It actually replaces this line, replaces these lines, and mounts a little cooler here. So that is an item that we will be selling separately on our website that you can use if you would like to buy that from us. You can just replace this entire line and get it out of the way. So next thing we did, just kind of a helpful tip for installing the Low Pro. We took one of the original bolts and threaded it in from the back of the hole on each side. So what that's going to do is help when you lift the bumper into place, you can kind of hang the weight of the bumper on these bolts, so it will hold the weight for you as you get the rest of the hardware started, and you don't have to worry about trying to hold it up all at the same time while you're starting bolts. So that's just a helpful little hint there, to thread a bolt in from the back side on each one of those mounting plates, and then you can lift the bumper into place and hang it right onto those bolts as you're installing it. Okay, so we've now got the Low Pro bumper bolted on to the front of the 4Runner. We lifted it up there and set it in place on the bolts that we threaded in from the back side. Just kind of hung it in place, and then we started the rest of the remaining hardware. Again, we're using the original bolts that came with the 4Runner, and then we're putting the supplied 3/8 grade 8 flat washers on those bolts and then threading them in. So you'll want to thread in these 2 bolts along with the inside one in there with the flat washer on, get those all started, and then you'll take this lower bolt that we had in there earlier, remove it and spin it around and put it back in through the front side there. You'll want to adjust the Low Pro bumper at this point in time. Make sure it's level, get it to the height you want it. Since this is an SR5 4Runner, we adjusted the bumper right in the middle as far as the slots are concerned, up and down, so we put it right in the middle for height. If you have a TRD Pro and you're running the TRD Pro skid plate that comes up to the front here, you'll need to put the Low Pro all the way to the top of that adjustment to make room for the skid plate to fit underneath the bumper. So once you get your Low Pro adjusted vertically, make sure it's level. You can tighten down all of that hardware. All of those bolts can be tightened to 60 foot-pounds. And once those are all tight, now is a good time to also work on the wiring of the winch and the light. While the plastic bumper cover is off, you have easy access to routing all the wiring and getting that all taken care of right now. We have the Low Pro bumper all bolted in place. All of the original hardware has been tightened down here. The next thing we're going to do is put on the L-shaped support brackets on each side. So there's one of these for each side of the bumper, and these go directly right here on each side. So you'll line it up with this factory hole in the frame here, and then line it up with the slotted hole in the back of the Low Pro bumper mounting plate there. So once you get this L bracket held up in place, you're going to install the hardware that we supply with the bumper. So right here, this is the 12mm fine thread bolt with 1/2 inch flat washer. And here we used one of the 3/8 by 1 carriage head bolts, along with 3/8 flat washer and a 3/8 flange nut on the back side. So once this bracket has been kind of lifted up into place, there's quite a bit of adjustability here. You'll want to lift it up so that it's not hanging down below the bumper real low. Lift it up in place, tighten down your hardware. You can tighten this bolt to 35 foot-pounds, and this one can go to 60 foot-pounds. So this next portion is going to show you how to cut the plastic bumper to prepare to fit it around the Low Pro bumper. So we've got the bumper on just a couple of stands here in our shop, and got it all marked out. We'll show you the measurements for that. This particular 4Runner is an SR5 and did not have the black plastic valance across the front here. Lots of the 4Runners do have that valance, so if yours does have that black plastic cover, you're going to need to remove that first. So you'll want to flip the bumper cover face down, and there are a bunch of white plastic clips along the inside there that you take out, and then that cover just comes right off the front of the bumper. So remove that first, and then flip the bumper cover over again, and we'll mark out where to cut for the low pro. So the first thing we did is we just marked along the inside of this groove. This black line here is right where we're going to cut it. We want to leave this little bit of material here because it will kind of fit behind the low pro and fill the gap and make it look nicer. So we continued that line up straight out of here, and we measured over 3/8 of an inch for that line here. So you can see that's at 3/8 of an inch all the way down. And then we came up and we marked 1.5 inches down from the plastic grill portion there, 1.5 inches to the bottom of the tape. So we put a bunch of marks with the marker all the way across here at 1.5 inches, and then we laid our tape across here to make a nice straight line, and then put arrows pointing to which side of the tape that we need to cut on. So again, that's 1.5 inches down to the bottom of the tape. You're going to cut along the bottom of this tape first, and then come inside here and cut along this line and completely remove this center portion of the plastic. All right, so for cutting the plastic bumper cover here, what we're going to use is just a 4.5 inch angle grinder with a small cutoff wheel. There's multiple different tools that you can use. Some use like a dermal tool with a cutoff wheel, or like an oscillating tool that can cut through the plastic, or an air saw others will use. It's like a tiny little sawzall that runs on air. So there's multiple things you can use. We're going to use a cutoff wheel, and the main thing you want to watch for when you're using these, since they're spinning so fast, is just to go really steady with it. As you're cutting along here, make sure that your cutoff wheel does not gouge into this portion of the bumper. Obviously you don't want to cut into that, so you'll want to move real slowly into this corner and then change directions and cut this way to complete your cut into the corner of the plastic. Okay, so we've completely cut our plastic section out of the middle there. You can see that we went along our black line that we had here and left this little portion of plastic cut right below, right along the bottom edge of our tape here. And especially if you're using a cutoff wheel like we did, it's going to make a mess. It'll spray this plastic pieces all over, but once they dry, after a minute or so, that stuff all scrapes off pretty easily. And then you'll want to come in here and clean off these rough edges. You can kind of peel them off with your hand, or get a knife back here and scrape along the edge and clean up that edge. Also, option, some people like to use the rubber edge guard and put it along the plastic here and install that little trim. We do not send any of that with the Low Pro. We don't really necessarily require it. It's more of a personal preference. So if you like that look, you can put a piece of that on here along the edge. This portion will be completely covered by the Low Pro. Our steel bumper comes up over this, so it's probably not really worth covering this piece because you won't see it anyways. And the Low Pro does cover a portion of this, so really it's your choice if you'd like to put that rubber edge guard on or not. Okay, so we're ready to put the bumper cover back onto the 4runner. So what we need to do is, it's much easier if you've got someone to help you. So we've got the cover in front of the 4runner ready to go. And you got to lift it up and kind of lean it forward quite a bit. You get this bottom portion wiggled in between this plastic and behind the Low Pro bumper. And you kind of have to push it in behind the bull bar here as well, all at the same time while getting it to fit underneath the headlights. So we're going to go ahead and lift it up and kind of show you how we do that and get it in place here. So once the cover is hanging in place there, then you can start to work your way back around and push all the clips back into place. Clip that, get that plastic into place all the way around, and then we'll start reassembly of all the screws and show you how to adjust the plastic up to the Low Pro bumper. Okay, so we've got the plastic bumper cover back in place. You'll want to go around both sides and clip the bumper back onto the fender and the headlight. Just push on it and it'll clip back in place. Then you want to go inside the bumper here, behind the fender liner, and get up in here and make sure that you plug in your fog lights again so that doesn't get forgotten there. And the next thing, once those are plugged in, next thing you're going to do is install the flat brackets that are supplied with the low pro bumper to connect the plastic bumper to the low pro. So we took the flat bracket and set it up inside the low pro there. We used one of the supplied 3/8x1 carriage bolts here with a flat washer and a 3/8 flange nut on top. We just loosely installed that for now. You want to align this plate behind the plastic bumper here on the other side. And then we need to realign the fender liner and get this up in between. It goes between the plastic and the metal bracket there. And then we need to go around and reconnect all of these plastic clips and line them up with the hole underneath and up here inside the fender well. Push those over and clip them back into place so that you can put your screws or plastic clips back in. So we have our fender liners all installed now. All of the plastic clips are back in place. Screws installed all the way along the bottom here. And the final thing we need to do is tighten down this connecting bracket that's supplied with the bumper. So we have both of those loosely installed right now. This one gets a 3/8x1 flange nut with a flat washer on each side, and then a 3/8 flange nut on the top as well. So loosely install those, and then you can adjust the plastic up to the low pro bumper with those. So you can push on this plastic a little bit, pull it back or forward, whichever direction you'd like it to go, to adjust up to the low pro. On this side, we need to push it over a bit so we can actually bring this plastic forward and closer to the low pro. And if you have someone helping you with that, you can have them hold this plastic over to the low pro where you want it, and then tighten this hardware down as they hold it in place, and it'll help keep this plastic tight up to the low pro bumper and give you an even reveal on both sides. Okay, so we adjusted our plastic up to the low pro to get an even reveal here all the way down both sides. We kind of pushed this one that direction, and this side we pushed over to try and get the same gap on both sides all the way down. Once those are adjusted where you want them, finish tightening up this hardware here. Both of these bolts can go to 35 foot-pounds. And all of that stuff is now complete as far as installing the low pro. One thing to watch for is if you do have a winch in your low pro, when you put the low pro on, make sure that your air conditioning line is clearing the winch and then it's not rubbing on it. And also double check your power steering line as well, and that it is not rubbing on your winch. So those are the final items down here on the bottom of the bumper. And we're going to move on to finishing the top now. We've lowered the 4runner down here to finish up the final details. Basically the last things that need to be done up top here is to go through and reinstall the plastic clips that hold the top of the grill and the bumper in place. So one here on each side, and then these down inside here all the way along this black support here, and then the one screw right in the middle. Once those are all installed, then you'll want to put your plastic cover back in place and go through and install all of those clips all the way across, pop those into place, and that will be the last thing you need to do to finish up the install. And now your low pro bumper is complete.